Okay, so I'm Bob Huttinga, and I'd like to just welcome you to this class, Homeopathy for Spring and Summer. I did this class 3-4 years ago. It's very beneficial because we like to focus on these first aid things that you can do for yourself. And there's a bunch of things that happen in the summer because we're outside playing, and so we're going to talk about those things. So we're going to go till 8 or 8:30. I think I said 8 in the flyer, but probably going to be more like 8:15 or so. Please ask questions as they come up. So if you have a question, ask them. If it's real personal or it's about your own self, then talk to me afterwards. There's restrooms down the hall. Feel free to leave and use them if you need them. There's a water cooler up front if you're thirsty. And turn your cell phones down or off. I'd appreciate that. I do this mostly for myself. Kind of embarrassing when you're the speaker and your cell phone goes off. So I'm going to introduce you to clinical homeopathy. There's also classical homeopathy. And in classical homeopathy, the homeopath tries to find a single remedy that's going to fix all of the issues. It can be done. It's a really difficult process. And so when I studied homeopathy, I studied clinical homeopathy, which is you have a problem and then you use a homeopathic remedy to take care of that. So it's a lot like general medicine, only using homeopathic remedies instead of prescription medicine. I mentioned the sign-up sheet. If you're not getting our newsletter, please sign up on the sign-up sheet when you leave tonight. So this question always comes up. What is health? And almost everybody says the absence of disease. Well, that's kind of based on the typical traditional medical model. What we like to think of as health is having enough energy to do everything you want to do without any limitations. And I see 80, 90, 100-year-old, we have a 102-year-old patient who still drives a car, lives alone, walks to church. That's amazing. And she has tons of energy. So that can be a goal for us.
Ms. Butler?
So what is health? First, we start out with what we call our constitutional health. That's what you're born with. It's the result of your genetics and your mother's pregnancy. So the things that happen to your mom during pregnancy can affect your constitutional health when you're born. And then events, things happen to us throughout our lives. And so what generally happens is maybe you're 3 years old and you get a case of strep throat. And so you get treated and your level of health returns to what it was before. But sometimes you get something serious and it doesn't quite return, and maybe something else happens in your life, and maybe something big happens. And often we're 40, 50, 60 years, 50 years of age, and our level of health is way down here compared to where it was when we were a child. Now, homeopathy is a way to return us to a level of health that we had before. And I will get into that later. Then there are things that we call the obstacles to recovery. So things that are happening to us. Our immune system sometimes gets sabotaged, but also there can be deficiencies and excesses. So we kind of look for those things. If you're deficient in vitamins, if you don't have enough chondroitin in your diet, you're going to get arthritis. Why? Because you have to have these ingredients to make cartilage. If you don't have those ingredients, your body can't make cartilage. You're going to get wear and tear. You're going to get joint pain. Excesses, alcohol, tobacco, too much food, too much stress, too many toxins. These things all can affect our level of health. And we call those obstacles to recovery. And then there's pathology. So when things go bad, eventually there's damage to the tissues. And that's where often traditional medicine focuses their attention. We want to focus up in here to get rid of the effects of these emotional shocks that have happened to us, the physical shocks, and the obstacles to recovery. So what should happen as we go through our lives, we should see a little down if we get an illness, but a full recovery. Maybe something else happened, a full recovery, something else happens, and fully recover. So that when you're old and getting ready to leave, your level of health is just like it was when you were born. One of my mentors, a gentleman named Jose Silva, he always said he was going to die in perfect health at age 98. And he was 89 when he died, and he really was in extremely good health. He gathered his family together one night, and he told them all that he was going to pass away, and he did the next day in perfect health. So that really should be our goal. When we're finished with our lives, we should still have a good healthy body. And homeopathy is a way to do that. So traditional medicine focuses on diseases. You have to have a diagnosis, evidence-based. You got to have tests, and if you don't have those things, they'll often say, "Well, there's nothing wrong with you," but you might feel really bad. And often people get this, "Well, your tests are all normal. There's nothing wrong with you," but yet they still feel pretty rotten. So, in naturopathic medicine, it's more health-oriented. We look for symptoms. We don't look for a diagnosis, we look for symptoms. And so deficiencies and excesses are the things that we focus on. And we try to make corrections before the pathology develops. Because once you start getting destruction of bone at a joint, it's much harder to fix that than if you use a supplement or you use some sort of homeopathy throughout your life. So again, we like to focus on the causes, and in the case of deficiency, you want to build by taking supplements, and if there's excesses, you want to do cleansing. Now, supplements are really important, but you do have to be sensible. I had a lady in here on Monday who was taking 47 supplements.
Oh.
Now, that's ridiculous. So we pared that list down quite a bit, and she really argued with me that she needed these things. Somebody told her that she needed them. Well, if somebody tells you you need a supplement, you may need that for a while, but you don't. It doesn't mean you need it for the rest of your life. And we recommend that you learn how to muscle test so that you know how often and when to take these remedies. So this is just a little summary of natural therapeutics. So nutrition is one of the most important. We like to focus on that. Hygiene, which includes exercise, elimination of waste, and water intake. And then supplements. Herbal medicines, so things that come from plants, which would be the roots of a plant, the flowers, the aerial parts, which are like the stems and the leaves, or the essential oils that can be distilled out of the plant. So those are all included in herbal medicine. In homeopathic medicine, there's two main branches. One is Hahnemannian, developed by Dr. Samuel Hahnemann, and then Bach flower remedies, developed by Dr. Edward Bach in England. So the Bach flower remedies, he developed 38 of these remedies. These are homeopathic medicines. There's a whole bunch more have been developed since then. Chelation therapy is included in this. It's an IV treatment to clean plaque out of the arteries. There's only one place around here that does it, the Bourne Clinic. That's a little pricey. Insurance doesn't cover it, but it's very effective at cleaning out your arteries. And then energy medicine. So Tai Chi, Qigong, acupuncture, tapping, Reiki, touch for health, things like this that have to do with the energy that surrounds our body. So these are all parts of naturopathic medicine. So let's take a look at homeopathy. First, the history. Samuel Hahnemann practiced, he was a physician. He practiced from 1790 to 1833. He developed homeopathy sort of out of frustration. His daughter became very ill and she passed away. And he was so frustrated with the medicine of the time, which was pretty rudimentary, that he quit practicing medicine and he became a translator. So he translated medical journals and articles and research papers. And some of the articles that he was translating, he found there was an article about use of quinine for malaria. And the symptoms of quinine poisoning, which he'd been familiar with as a physician, were similar to the symptoms of malaria. And he started experimenting on his friends and started to find that when he diluted these substances, he could reverse them so that the remedy, let's go a little further here and then I'll explain the rest of that. Homeopathy is a complete system of therapeutics, so there's over 3,000 remedies. Now, I don't use all of those. I use probably 200 or so, the more common ones. But he developed what's called the law of similars. And Hippocrates, at 400 BC, actually talked about this. And what it means is that a substance, if prepared homeopathically, can reverse the effects that are caused by that substance. So, for example, allium cepa is a remedy made from onions. And what do onions do if you chop up an onion?
Make you cry.
Yeah, they make you cry, they make your nose run, they make your eyes burn. And so if you have seasonal allergies that has symptoms of runny eyes, runny nose, you can take homeopathic onion, allium cepa, and it will reverse those symptoms. Ipecac, a lot of people are familiar with syrup of ipecac. When I was growing up, everybody had a bottle of that in your house. So if you accidentally were poisoned, it would make you vomit. Well, homeopathic ipecac will stop vomiting, and it's really very effective for doing that.
Do you know much about the snake venom one, Bob?
Say it again?
Do you know much about the snake venom one?
Yeah, we use that a lot. Laxatives, a primary use is in people that have blood clots and strokes. Now, if you get bit by a snake, you get big bruises because snake venom has an anticoagulant in it. And so when there's large bruises or when there's blood clots, we want to dissolve those clots and get rid of the bruising. And the laxative does an amazing job with that.
I didn't know if you could use it like to reverse snake venom, you know, like.
Oh, no, it's not used for that.
Not used for it, okay.
That you actually need an anti-venom, which is a physical substance. Now, and when we use laxatives for blood clots and deep vein thrombophlebitis, strokes, things like that, we use it in a low potency, and I'll explain the reason for that in a little bit. We had a lady who was 92. She had a stroke and had a large blood clot in her head. She also had a bleed, and the doctor, the neurosurgeon, took part of her skull off to remove that big blood clot that was in there, and they just sent her home with hospice. And so her family, they brought her over to see me. She couldn't talk, she couldn't swallow, and basically she was going to die in a week or two. So we use lachesis and an herbal medicine called natozymes. Natozymes are enzymes that will chew up blood clots. And in less than 24 hours, she started talking, and within a couple of days, she could swallow. And so, about a month after this, she went back to see the neurosurgeon, and they had kept this bone. They'd sent her home without this bone. They kept it somewhere, freezer somewhere or something. And they opened her up, put her back on. It's about 3 years ago. She's still doing really good. So that was pretty remarkable. Snake venom.
Wow. Say a low dose, how low is the dose?
6C is what we use. And I'll explain that in just a little bit. So these remedies are made by what is called dilution. So if you look at a homeopathic remedy, you're going to see 12C, 30X. The X potencies are made by diluting 1 to 10. The C potencies are diluted 1 to 100, and M's are 1 to 1,000. Now, so how does that work? Well, you take, if you're going to make an X potency, you take one part of the original substance. You make that original substance. It's called a mother tincture. So let's say you're going to make a original substance from onions. You would chop up a bunch of onions. You put it in alcohol. You let it sit for a day or two. That liquid is called a mother tincture. So you do 1 drop of that in 9 drops of water. You shake it up about 20 times, and then you take 1 drop of that and you put it in 9 drops of water. And you keep doing that diluting and shaking, 1 to 10, and every time you do it, the number goes up. So in this case, this would be a 1x. You do it again, it's a 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, 6x. So if you have a remedy that's a 30x, that has been diluted and shaken or succussed 30 times. Now we think of, in our general chemistry, the more you dilute something, the less is in there, and it becomes less and less and less potent. But something happens in this diluting and succussion process where the energy signature from the compound remains in the water, and so it actually becomes more potent as the dilution increases. It's not well understood, but it has to do with the structure of the water that's being used to dilute it. Now if you just dilute it and you don't do the shaking, then it doesn't develop that potency. Now if you wanted to make a C potency, you would take 1 part of the mother tincture and 99 parts of water, and then you mix that, succuss it, and dilute it. Keep doing that so you have a 1C, 2C, 3C, 4C. In this example, they use 10 milliliters of mother tincture and 990 milliliters of water. They do much smaller quantities, because otherwise you have large amounts of stuff that you're just discarding. Now, you used to make these all by hand, but now they're made by a machine, and it seems to work just as well. So, how does this work? It works at the energy level, at the subatomic level, whereas traditional and herbal medicine work at the cellular level in our body or at the molecular level. And it works by what are called vibrational harmonics. Every atom has an electromagnetic field around it. Every molecule has a field around it. Every group of molecules, which would be tissues, those have electromagnetic field. Groups of tissues, which become cells, every cell has a field around it. Groups of cells become organs, every organ has a field. And then the body as a whole has this electromagnetic field. So when there's an illness, this vibrational frequency is out of kilter. And a remedy has the same vibrational frequency as a healthy organ. So when you take the remedy, it with harmonics, it brings that frequency that's out of sync back to where it's supposed to be. So for example, if you pluck a guitar string, pluck one string, all the rest of them begin to vibrate as well. That's harmonics. So it's a little complicated, somewhat difficult to understand, but it really works extremely well. So that harmonic balancing draws the abnormal frequency back to normal, because the frequency in the remedy matches the healthy organ or the healthy tissue.
And do I have it right that you're not supposed to touch the remedy with your?
Well, that's what everybody says, but I don't really think it makes any difference. We were taught that the skin oils could deactivate them, but they're going on your tongue, and we sometimes put them on the skin, especially the Bach flower remedies. When I worked in urgent care, I always carried a little bottle of rescue remedy, and these kids would come in with cuts and need stitches, and I'd spray it in my hand, put it on the back of their neck, and it just chill right out. So I think that's probably an old misconception that's not accurate. Now, the way they determine which remedy causes what are done with something called provings. So what Hahnemann would do is he would take the mother tincture and give it to people until they got sick. And then he would write down their symptoms. And I guess he had some friends that really loved him because he kept doing it to these people. In his lifetime, he perfected 43 remedies. And so in about 25 years of research to come up with 40 remedies. So it was quite a tedious process. He also used information associated with accidental poisonings. So if somebody got poisoned, what were their symptoms? And then he would find somebody who was ill with those symptoms, and then he would give them the remedy and see if it made them better. So that was how we did this research. So I'm just going to give you a couple of cases to give you some examples. These really don't apply to the spring and summer theme, but they're really interesting. This is a 50-year-old lady. She was a PA that I worked with. She woke up one morning and she had this big cobweb in her vision. She had broken loose some blood vessels in her eye, and all she could see in that one eye was this big black cobweb that covered about half of her vision. And she went to the eye doctor, of course, who said, well, this will go away, and it's going to take 3 to 6 months. And what has to happen is those blood vessels have to gradually be reabsorbed and chewed up by the macrophages and so on. So we use this remedy, homeopathic phosphorus in the 12C. And the reason I chose the 12C is we want a little bit of the phosphorus. We want a little bit of the physical substance. So anything that's has a potency greater than the 12C no longer has any of the physical substance left in it. So in this case, we wanted a little bit of the phosphorus. And phosphorus is very good for eyes. And we use it for cataracts in a 6C potency. And we use it for glaucoma. But anyway, in 1 week, this big cobweb was completely gone. I have about 6 or 7 patients now that have had their cataracts go away using phosphorus 6C. You need to catch it early. If you get them when the ophthalmologist says they're ripe and they want to do surgery, that doesn't seem to work. But if they're just starting, it seems to work quite well.
Is that the same dosage?
6C is the one we use for cataract.
Once a day?
Pardon?
Yep. Once a day like the other?
Yeah. This is about the glaucoma. This lady was allergic to the eye drops used to treat glaucoma, and so she used this once a day, and after about 6 months, their pressures returned to normal. With these low potencies, you can do them longer without really any problem. This is a 74-year-old man. He had some huge bone spurs in his neck. He could only move his neck a little bit. He'd broken his neck 20 years before in a farm accident, and he had a lot of pain. We used herbal hydrangea and calc carb. We usually use 12C now. For him, we use 6C. For him, I use the 12C, and completely dissolved those. Now, I've experimented over the years, and I found that if people have a lot of bone spurs and a lot of degenerative arthritis, we only use it for 1 or 2 months, because what can happen is it can dissolve these fusions. When you have bad arthritis, your body begins to fuse its own vertebrae together. We call them autofusions. And once they're fused, there's very little pain. While this one lady, I gave it to her too long, and she began to loosen up those fusions. So I learned, unfortunately, by her experience. So we only use it for a month or two, and somebody who has a lot of neck or back problem. This is a lady that had a bad reaction to a flu shot. I met her 18 months after she had this flu shot. She had severe fibromyalgia. She spent 7 months in bed after the flu shot. And we used this gelsemium 200C, so that's a high potency. We give it twice a day for 5 days. It says doses, but it should say 5 days. And she had complete resolution of that within a couple of weeks. It happened really quickly. She had 1 relapse, and we treated her again, and she has done really well. When I met her, she was able to work 1 day a week. She was a nurse, and she spent the rest of the time trying to recover so she could go back to work 1 day. Pretty dramatic. This is a 4-year-old with lots of chronic ear problems. We took him off the dairy and used camellia, the 30X. They would do that 2 or 3 times a day, and this kid did not have another ear infection after that. A lot of it had to do with his allergy to dairy. This is a kid that had really severe ADHD. Really hated to see this kid come to the office because he just got in every drawer and it just never stopped moving. I felt really sorry for his mother. She was extremely overwhelmed. He was on 3 drugs, Respiridol, which is it's a psych med, Adderall, and Vistarol. We gave him homeopathic coffee. Now think about what happens when you drink too much coffee, right? You get all revved up. And it was pretty amazing. It worked very well. I did it for a few weeks, and then we followed him with something called tarantula, which is made from the venom of a tarantula. And people who are bitten by tarantulas sing and dance, and they get really hyper. Again, you're trying to reverse that hyperness with the remedy. This is a lady who had fractured her leg, her lower leg, both the tibia and the fibula. She had gone for 5 months and it wouldn't heal. She had a little electric stimulator put in to try to make it heal, and we used Symphytum. This is one of our summer remedies, absolutely amazing for fractures. Within a month after starting this, she was completely healed. Use it twice a day, and we gave her bioplasma too, which is a cell salt that has all the ingredients that bone needs to grow and to heal. We use bioplasma also for osteoporosis. And this is a little boy who had severe separation anxiety, 6 years old. It was so bad, when his mother would go to the bathroom or take a shower, he would sit at the door and cry. And his mother had to take him to school. The teacher would come out and carry him into the classroom and cry for 2 or 3 hours. It was just a mess. The story was, though, the mother had a reaction to a Nubain injection at delivery. Nubain is a pain medicine, and she almost died. Consequently, the baby almost died. So the separation anxiety actually was a fight or flight reaction because he almost died. And his mother, who was his life source at that point, was tied to him, and so that separation anxiety just continued on and on. We gave him a Venus sativa, which is a remedy that we use for narcotic addiction, and a single dose totally fixed it. I've never seen anything like it, never seen it like it since. I've tried it a couple times on others, and it hasn't worked. But the next morning, the mother called. She was just astounded, and she was interesting because she was sort of depressed because he was there all the time, and all of a sudden he didn't need her anymore. That's kind of interesting.
Interesting.
Okay, so types of remedies or conditions: acute, chronic, intercurrent, and constitutional. I'll go through each of these and explain them in a little more detail. We're going to talk about acute remedies tonight. These are things that require first aid. First aid in this setting is different from bandaging and doing CPR and things like that. If somebody needs that, do that kind of first aid. But first aid in our definition is going to be bug bites and injuries and sprains and strains and things like that. For acute remedies, we use mostly 30 Cs, sometimes a 200 C. Things like arnica, belladonna, camellia, apis. I'll explain these all a little later. So chronic remedies are for conditions that people have had for a long time. They have ongoing signs and symptoms, and we usually use low potency, so 6 or 12 C. So that's why with the cataracts and the glaucoma, we're using these low remedies. If you use high potency remedies in those conditions, you can cause what's called a medicinal aggravation. Now, an aggravation is where you get a worsening of your symptoms caused by the remedy. Now, if that happens, in a sense, it's a good thing because it means you have the right remedy. It's just too strong. So you reduce the potency or the frequency, and you usually get really good results. But when you use the low potencies to start, usually you do not have these aggravations.
How soon do you see the aggravation?
Usually it's pretty quick. When I was first starting, hardly any experience with this, just book training. I had a woman that had eczema, and one of the remedies we use for eczema is sulfur, homeopathic sulfur. Well, she had just a little patch on her arm. She'd had it most of her life, and at the present time she was keeping it under control with some olive oil. But she had had steroids and a whole bunch of other treatments. So I gave her sulfur in a 200 C, a single dose, and that was the recommendation. You just did one dose and you see what happens. But she had this next day horrific breakup. She was so miserable, and it lasted for 2 weeks. And I felt horrible. I didn't know what to do. And we tried some other remedies, and eventually it calmed down. Once it was gone, she's never had any eczema since. Now, she was absolutely miserable for that 2 weeks. And we could have got the same result using a low potency over a longer period of time. The old homeopaths would intentionally give people aggravations. And they liked it because they knew they were going to get a good result. But Hahnemann, in his final book, he wrote a book, 6 editions. In the 6th edition, he talked about using the low dose remedies and instead of putting people through these aggravations.
Are the aggravations like with something like eczema? Is that kind of like her body getting rid of stuff?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
a cleanse.
It's
Okay.
like a healing crisis. They're called herxemeria, and it's been noted in medicine for a long time, but it just doesn't make sense to create that if you don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
So if things go good and then you get a little relapse, you can use the same remedy, or maybe the same remedy with a little higher potency. Now, we referred to a term in chronic treatment called layers. If you remember that little diagram I showed, that when somebody got ill, they didn't recover, they got ill again, they didn't totally recover, and eventually, well, each of those incidents is a layer. So what can happen if you have this person that has a really low level of health, you start with remedy, and then you remove that layer, and you find the next one, and you gradually go back through and use a variety of remedies, removing one layer at a time. If each of those layers needed a single remedy, you could have this miraculous recovery because one remedy would get rid of all the layers. And that's what the classical homeopaths would do, is try to find a remedy that would cover all of those layers. Way too much work. In my opinion, it doesn't work very well. Alright, so intercurrent remedy. So when you're doing chronic treatment, sometimes you'll trigger other symptoms. So for example, I had a lady that had quite bad arthritis. We were giving her calcarb and hydrangea, and she called one morning, says, I think I have a urinary infection. Have you had these before? Oh yeah, I've had lots of urinary infections. So let's get a urine, get a culture, no sign of infection. But she had all the symptoms. So what was happening is we cleared off a layer, and the next layer, which had to do with these recurrent urinary infections, showed up. The symptoms did, not the infection. So I gave her a homeopathic remedy that was needed for the urinary infections. In that case, it was cantharis, and that is for burning. So anything that causes burning sensation, we use homeopathic cantharis. And Constantine Herring, he was one of the famous homeopaths in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He called this Herring's Law, that people would experience previous illnesses in reverse order in which they recur. So as we're going through these chronic remedies, they'll experience these things. They won't actually get the illness, they'll get some of the symptoms. So you're probably not going to do this, but you might experience it, and that's why I'm bringing it up. If you take a remedy to handle some symptoms, and suddenly you get a bunch of other symptoms like you've had in the past, you could be developing what's called an intercurrent situation. And then you just take the remedy that's needed for those new symptoms. So the calcarb created removed the layer, allowed the urinary tract symptoms to emerge, and then we use the cantharis for that. So constitutional remedies are things that we need to take care of conditions that we're born with. So sometimes people are born with congenital abnormalities or chronic illnesses. Sometimes there are things that are caused by our mother's pregnancy, things that happen to her mother, kids that have addicted mothers, fetal alcohol syndrome, these kinds of things. They need constitutional remedies. So we use these remedies in relative strengths the low potencies are for chronic or constitutional treatment, or sometimes we need physical material. So the lachesis at 6C potency still has some of the snake venom in it, and we need that to help get rid of those blood clots. So lachesis at a 30C or 200C would probably not do anything for a person that has a stroke.
What's CK?
CK.
Okay,
Oh.
CK.
Where?
No, the hypericum that I take.
Oh,
Look
okay.
at CK.
Yeah.
So I wondered
Oh, okay.
how we get CK.
It has to do with the manufacturer, somebody who developed the remedy. They named that, but it's a C potency.
Oh, okay.
It's diluted 1 to 100.
Okay.
You take that for nerves.
The nerve pain from
Yeah.
pain in the neck.
You've done that a lot, right? A lot of years.
Mm-hmm. So everything keeps it under control.
Yeah.
When it clears up, I think I don't take it every day.
Right. Hypericum is a remedy made from St. John's wort, and it's very effective for nerve pain. So people that have sciatica or pinched nerves in the neck, post-herpetic neuralgias, tailbone injuries, particularly good for old tailbone injuries.
What's the name of it?
Hypericum.
And how much would you take for the poster pattern?
Oh, you need a high potency, like 200. The more severe, the higher potency you can use. So, when you buy a homeopathic remedy, it comes in a little tube, and the tubes all say take 5 pellets 3 times a day. Now, because of the way these things work, 1 pellet actually works just as good as 5. And the rep from Boiron, who's the company that makes these, he said, well, we just put that on there so they buy more remedies. Well, you know, it's good for us in business, but it's not really the best thing for patients. So we always tell people use 1 or 2, works just as good as 5. So the acute things, usually a 30C taken 3 or 4 times a day, sometimes a 200C once or twice a day. So if you use a high potency, you don't use it as often. Lower potency, you use it more frequently. And the more acute the injury, the more frequently you use it. So if you have a badly sprained ankle, if you have arnica on hand, you take it every 15 minutes. You get a bee sting, you take it every 10 or 15 minutes. And usually after 4 doses of a bee sting remedy, the sting is gone and you're all done. We've seen these big, fat, swollen ankles that normally would take 2 months to totally heal, be completely healed in 2 weeks using arnica.
Arnica 6C one?
No, 30C.
30C?
Yeah.
Every 15 minutes.
So the acute conditions usually will use a 30C. Chronic 6C, 12C, and you're going to do it for several months or until you forget to take the remedy. So I just tell people, if you don't have symptoms and you forget to take it, you don't need it anymore. Sometimes we'll use like a 200C twice a day for a short period of time. So the chronic things, low dose, long treatment, or higher dose, short treatment. So this is just kind of interesting. Things that alter the effects of homeopathic remedies. Things that are a lot of odor to them. So like coffee, mint, camphor, menthol. If somebody has a respiratory thing and they're using a remedy for a respiratory condition,
Original.
make sure that they're
I
not
did
using Vicks or rubbing their chest with some icy hot or something like that, because it can actually antidote the remedy. The essential oils don't seem to do that so much, but we do ask people to kind of stay away from wintergreen and some of the mint oils if they're using homeopathic. The higher potencies are affected more than the low potencies. So So if you're doing low potency, it's not going to antidote it as much as the high potency. Some medications can modify homeopathic remedies. Electric blankets, the electromagnetic field around the wires in an electric blanket can interfere with the remedies. Alcohol, tobacco, cocaine, marijuana can affect remedies. Dental drilling. I don't know exactly how that works, but we've seen people who are doing really well with homeopathic treatment go get some dental work and they relapse and you got to start all over again.
Frequency.
Yeah, I think it must have something to do with vibration through your whole body.
Right.
And then some homeopathic remedies are contraindicated because they are contradictory. The vibrational frequency of one can counteract another. So when we recommend something, we always look it up, make sure that it's compatible. Now, there's always a question about airport x-rays. We were taught that you shouldn't let your remedies go through x-ray and ask to have them hand checked. But we've had a few cases where we travel, we carry a whole bunch of this stuff when we travel, and either forgot to have them checked or we're in such a hurry we didn't have time to get them hand checked and they still work. So I don't think that it really makes much difference. Probably a higher potency ones might. 30s that we usually carry don't seem to be a problem. Nice thing about homeopathics, many foreign countries you can buy them easily. Like we were in Italy and the whole pharmacy was full of them. They had very few prescription drugs. So, remedies to know. How do you know what to use? Well, if you're really serious, you buy one of these books. Now, they're $100 a piece, and I usually don't recommend them because there are other ways to get your information. But this particular one was put together by a guy from Grand Rapids who lives in Virginia now. He was my teacher. Took him about 10 years to write these books. And one is called the Repertory and one's called the Materia Medica. Materia Medica is a description of all of the remedies. This one has 3,200 remedies in it. And then the Repertory is a description of symptoms. So this one has an index. And so you can go and look up, let's see, alkaline taste, allergic rhinitis, desires almonds, aloe poisoning, altered smell, altered voice. So it's indexed alphabetically with all these symptoms. Gives you a page, then you can go look it up, and you then can scan through this and then tell you what remedies are most likely to be helpful. It's really not necessary to have this kind of detail if you're just using this for yourself. There's a couple of good homeopathic books. There's one called Homeopathic Remedies for Lay People and Professionals, written by a friend of mine who's a PA. His name is Blair Lewis. It's very down-to-earth and common sense use of homeopathic remedies. Now there's an internet source. I'm going to show you a little later a program called Homeopathic House Call. And that has been pretty successful. It's quite an easy way to determine what remedy you need, and I will go through that before we finish.
What's that called again?
Homeopathic House Call. And I'll go online with mine and we'll go through a case or two and you can see how it works. So, one of the more famous homeopathic remedies is arnica. It's used for sprains, strains, bruises, strokes, surgical pain. The plastic surgeons are all using this now. and having much less bruising, much less bleeding. I was at a traditional medical CME, and they were talking about using arnica. And I fell out of my chair. So we recommend it for the people take it before surgery. And the way you do that, if you're going to have surgery, is you take one the night before your surgery, one the morning of, and then one just before, if you can, and then after, as soon as you can after, and then the probability is you won't need any kind of pain medicine. It should be a 30C. There was some people using 200 Cs and 1 Ms, and they found that the anesthesia doses were, they needed less anesthesia, but the anesthesiologist didn't know that, so people were getting over anesthetized and harder to wake them up. But that has not happened at all with 30 Cs. Barb had her gallbladder out, and they were trying to give her morphine. I don't have any pain. I don't want any of that. So this is something we think should be in every household. I carry it in my toolboxes and every place that I do things. It is quite amazing. You injure yourself, start taking it immediately. It is not good for chronic pain, however. This is for acute pain. So if you have arthritis or chronic back pain, it's really not going to do much for it. And you take it every 15 to 30 minutes at the onset of an injury. If the injury is 2 or 3 days old, you don't need it that frequently, then 4 or 5 times a day. All right, apis. Apis is actually a remedy made from honeybees. So they take honeybees, grind them up, put them in alcohol, and that's what's used to make the mother tincture that then is diluted to make the remedy. So if you're ever someplace and you get stung badly, you actually can make your own remedy. If you can get the bee that stung you, that actually works the best. But if you're out in the woods somewhere and you get stung, you can actually make your own homeopathic remedy by smooshing it up, putting it in water or alcohol, and using that, diluting it down a couple times, and then take that liquid orally and put some on the bee sting itself. We use this also for hives, but mostly we're using it for sting. Now, if you're a person that has anaphylaxis, we recommend that you have your EpiPen, and if you get stung by a bee, you go to the ER, and on the way you start taking the Apis 200C. We want it every 15 or 20 minutes, and we've had quite a number of cases where people have actually, by the time they get to ER, they're doing well and they have gone home. If you have an EpiPen, do not use it unless you're having trouble breathing or trouble swallowing. It should not be taken every time you get a bee sting. It can make you feel really bad. So, but if you do have anaphylactic type reaction to bee sting, the homeopathic 200C is something that you should have on hand. Put it with your EpiPen, start taking it right away. If you start having trouble breathing or swallowing, you use your EpiPen. But what happens is every time you use the homeopathic remedy, the next reactions get lighter, and everything starts getting better. Instead of, normally what happens is the reactions get worse.
Do you know if you can use it on dogs?
Oh yeah.
Same dosage?
Yep.
So would you use it for somebody who does have anaphylaxis to a bee sting prior to getting stung as a...
No.
No, only after you've been
Yeah.
stung.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that. You gotta have symptoms.
Okay.
Cantharis is good for burns, so physical, chemical burns, thermal burns, burning with urination, any kind of burning. Now, what we usually recommend for like sunburn is you mix aloe vera juice, put some lavender oil in it, spray it on the sunburn, and take Cantharis orally. And these remedies, I said orally, but actually you put them in your mouth and you suck on them from the tongue. So just stick them under your tongue, let them dissolve. This works extremely well for sunburn.
You know, if it works, for, burning, like, friend of ours, his tongue burned all the time, but it's a side effect of a medication he's
Yeah.
taking.
Could try it. I don't know for sure if that would work, but he's
there
described it
any
as a
worry
burning
about-
sensation.
Yeah, is there any worry about, contraindications for the?
No. Doesn't ever interfere with, because it works at a totally different level and a different mechanism.
Mhm.
You can't have interactions.
Okay.
How would you make the cancerous pills liquid? You put them in what? The aloe vera juice, and they would
No, you just take the little pellets orally,
orally.
sublingually. So for sunburn, there's two treatments. So you mix the aloe vera juice
Oh, okay.
and the lavender oil, spritz that on the burn, and then you take the cantheris
Oh.
sublingually under your.
How often did you say?
For real bad ones, every 30 minutes or so. We've seen blisters actually dry up in 24 hours. Symphytum. Symphytum, the Indians called comfrey root, bone nit. Symphytum is made from comfrey. There's been a lot of talk about comfrey and the negative potential risks of comfrey the last few years, but that can't happen with symphytum. We've seen just remarkable reactions and healing with these, bone healing. I've seen fractures healed by the time they usually put a kid in a cast, and they'll do an X-ray in 2 weeks and see how it's doing. I've seen lots of them completely healed by the time you do that first X-ray. The sooner you started, the faster it heals.
And same with 15 minutes thing or whatever, every 15 minutes you take it, or?
No, you don't need to do it like that. Let me go back here. Usually use once or twice a day. So it's not a frequent remedy like the arnica. You're just going to do it for the month that it takes to heal, or however many weeks it takes. We also use it in osteoporosis.
Mm-hmm.
And osteoporosis, you take it once a week. And that helps heal the microfractures that are occurring in osteoporosis.
Just once per week.
Once a week. Now, ledum. Ledum is made from wild rosemary. It's used for punctures and insect bites. So if you're a medical professional and you get stuck with needles, or if you get a thorn in your skin, any kind of puncture. Well, insect bites are punctures, and we also use this for the effects of injection. So if somebody has an injection reaction, we'll often give them ledum. You can use it preventively. So if you're a person that gets bit by insects a lot, if you attract insects, we can take this before you go out, and it'll reduce your attractiveness to the insects.
Like
Won't make you
mosquitoes?
ugly, it'll just keep you less attractive to the insect. But it works really well after the bite as well, so if you get itchy bites, put it on. Or you don't put it on, you take it orally.
How
And,
much orally?
Pardon?
You know, just,
How often?
yeah, often, like one, before you just go out like one time, or?
Yeah, usually if you're doing it preventively, if you're going out, for several hours, you might repeat it once an hour.
Okay,
If you have a lot of bites, or you have a grandkid or a kid that has a lot of bites, then you do it more frequently, like every 15 minutes. If you have a few bites, then just do it every hour or two.
cause when I go out, I attract mosquitoes, horribly, right? So I would wanna take it probably,
Take it
Once.
before you go, and then if you're out for a few hours, you just take it every couple of hours, or every hour or so.
I can sit on the same porch with my husband, and I keep my feet. They like my feet. They eat them. They never touch him. He never gets a mosquito bite.
I neither. I go out and I come home and I'm bit
I can, yeah.
Take B vitamins, that quite often helps,
I read that.
and garlic often helps.
Well, I eat enough that I should be radiating barely.
We talked a little bit about allium cepa. It's good for the itchy, burning, teary eyes, watery, runny nose. There are two other ones that we use for allergies. One is called histaminium, and the other is euphrasia. Euphrasia is EUPHRASIA. And usually you do these in a 30C 3 or 4 times a day. Oh, I did put this one in there. Histaminium. Allergic asthma, hives, itching. Another remedy that we use for asthma is I'll give it a minute. It's made from cockroaches.
Boy.
Now, this remedy was discovered by mistake. An Indian physician, her wife had severe asthma, and some cockroach got in her tea. And as she sipped her cockroach tea, her asthma got much better. And so he was a homeopath, so he began to experiment and did a proving on it. But for anybody with asthma, don't tell me it's made with cockroaches. Yeah. Rustox is a remedy we has several uses. Very good for poison ivy. It's also good for shingles. It's real important that you know what poison ivy looks like. Everybody here know what it looks like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the leaves are interesting. There's 3 leaves. The center leaf is serrated on both sides. The outside leaf is serrated on the outside, but not on the inside. So it's smooth on the inside. These two have very little or no serrations, but out here they're serrated. So that's what you look for. Now, if you see a rash of blisters in a line, that's always poison ivy or some contact dermatitis. So where the leaf ran across your skin and just left a little trail of the oil, the sooner you get that oil off of you, any kind of soap and water, any kind of detergent breaks up that oil. We have patients who are tree trimmers and are very sensitive to this. And what I have them do is put some dish liquid on their skin in the morning before they go to work. So there's a little layer of that detergent on their skin, and if that oil hits it, it breaks it up.
Herpes 1 and 2. What does it do for cold sores?
Well, anything that blisters. So Rustox is good for blisters. Now, we also have the homeopathic remedy, herpes 1 and 2, and that actually works better. And what happens there is the interval between the episodes gets longer and longer and longer. Pretty soon they just go away. And if you do have cold sores, you just take the remedy every time you get a breakout. Now, if it gets bad, you also use your traditional medicine, so your acyclovir cream, or some people use acyclovir tablets. You can do those as well. But when you do it treated homeopathically, the interval just gets longer, and pretty soon they just don't happen anymore.
Now, is this every hour?
Yeah, the more severe your symptoms are, the more frequently you use it. So
Do you take the Rustox for cold sores?
if you can,
Okay.
there are some other better remedies. That's why I was saying this herpes simplex 1 works better for cold sores.
Would that work better for shingles as well?
rust ox works really good
Works
for
good.
shingles.
Cool.
There's another one we use for poison ivy. It's called croton tea, and it's really good for itchy. So if you're really itchy, croton tea works good for that.
How do you spell that?
Croton, and then the second word is TIG, period. It's about a 27-letter word, so we'll just abbreviate it. Most of the names are from the actual name of the scientific name of the plant. Rust ox is actually poison oak. So the remedy is made from poison oak, used for poison ivy, poison oak, poison sumac. But it's also used for any blister. Thermal burns like the blistering from sunburn or hot water burn, the cantharis works better for that than rust ox. But if you didn't have cantharis and you had rust ox, you'd use that. Rust ox is also a really good remedy for restless legs. So anybody have that restless legs at night, works excellent for them. The next one is Ruta, Rutigraveolens. So we usually say just Ruta grav, 30C. Tendinitis, bursitis. It doesn't work every time, right, Catherine? She had a hip arthritis and bursitis, and just did not work. But most of the time, it works quite well. It works for the ganglion cysts. So when people get these little synovial cysts on their wrists, can also work for carpal tunnel syndrome. So multiple B vitamins and Ruta is where we start with carpal tunnel, and quite often it works. It's good for, along with arnica, for overuse. So for people who are working out and they overstrain themselves, or the weekend warriors who are not used to working and rake leaves all day and can't walk the next morning.
Does that seem to work better than the arnica?
I like arnica. Arnica works better for me, but Barb uses rust ox and Ruta a lot. Seems to work really well for me.
Now for kids,
Go ahead. No, that's okay.
for kids, is it the same? You
Yeah.
give them the same amount?
Yeah, for little kids, we use the X potencies. For kids, teenagers, we start using the seeds. So almost all the children remedies, when I do house calls, I have a bag full of remedies and almost all the X potencies. And we've had really good success. We treated a bunch of Amish kids 3 years ago with whooping cough. All really well.
Okay, so when Fred gets that in his hand, in his wrist,
Yeah.
we took him to a specialist. Okay, they said they could do surgery, he optometric. So I need to bring him up here and you need to look at it then, right?
Yeah, or you could just buy the remedy.
Okay, and what would he take? Does he take it
I
when
would-
it comes?
yeah. I would do it, well, when it flares up,
Okay,
I would suggest that you do it like 4 times a day.
4 times a day.
So what happens with those ganglion?
Can you get one of those right in the middle of your palm?
Yeah, you can get them anywhere.
Okay.
Where the markers are. What happens though with those little cysts is they look like a mushroom. It's a little sac that's attached to the sheath around the tendon, and it has a very narrow opening. So when you have repetitive work, it pumps some gel up in there, and it can't get out. Gradually, it'll ooze back out. So they're sort of come and go.
Yeah, it does.
But in somebody who works repetitively all the time, they stay pumped up. So
What about Baker's cyst?
they're kind of the same thing, but that's not a jelly fluid in those. It's more, but it's a little sac that's attached to the synovial sac of the knee.
Yeah, so it's synovial fluid.
It's called Baker's cyst because the old bakers always got arthritis in their knees, and they all had these big balls on the back of their knees. So
Now, what's the dosage then for the carpal tunnel? Same 1 an hour?
No, because it's chronic, you do it less, so 2-3 times a day.
Now, us little lay people can just buy
Yeah.
it and just,
Do it.
we're not gonna OD on it.
No, I had an Amish kid date a whole bottle.
Huh.
Especially anything over a 24X or a 12C, there's none of the physical substance left in it. So all that's there is energy. And if there are symptoms, they're going to improve. If there's no symptoms, it's going to do nothing. That's why they're so safe. You can't really have an allergic reaction.
I just love that.
All right. Epicac, we talked about this one before. Great for nausea or vomiting. Kids are 30C, adults 30X. I'm sorry, said that the other way around. Kids 30X, adults 30C. And because it just goes under the tongue, you don't have to drink water with it. And do that again if it's really bad every 15 minutes, or do it every time you vomit, and the interval between the vomiting gets further and further apart. It's not so good for morning sickness. We have a better one for that. But it does work for the nausea of motion sickness, although there is a better remedy for that as well.
Would chamomile help at all with vomiting?
I don't think so. I never,
My granddaughter was vomiting the other night, and I looked in their little kit that I'd given them a long time ago, and there was no Ipecac. There was nothing in there that said it was for nausea. And so I thought, well, chamomile's soothing, so I gave her that.
did it help?
Seemed to. I mean, but who knows?
So my teacher said is use whatever you have.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have the remedy that you're supposed to use, you try something else. So that's fine. It's going to help or it's going to do nothing.
Did it do nothing?
I made that pumpkin growing up for the Halloween.
Did you? Cool. All right, podophyllum. This one is for diarrhea, especially if there's like gurgling or noisy. Good for food poisoning. Also good for people that have rectal pain. Some people have a condition called tenesmus, and they'll get muscle spasms in their rectum, and it can be very painful. It's also been helpful for gallbladder attacks. So it's kind of for spasmy kind of thing. I've never used it for kidney stones, but might be interesting if a person's having severe spasms, bladder spasm, it might work for that. So, some other important remedies. These are not necessarily spring and summer. Calcarea carbonicum with hydrangea we use for kidney stones and for bone spurs. Again, if you got it real severe, don't use it for long periods of time. Liz?
If you use that for the full term, what you're suggesting, and it doesn't do anything to your bones, is there anything else you can try for bones? I got one on top of my foot and it's painful.
Yeah,
and
the
I
homeopathic Hecla lava. It's Heckla, Hecla lava, Lava. It's 6C, and use that with the hydrangea.
How long do you have to use that?
Well, I'm going to use it a month and then a month off, and in your case, a month on, a month off. Most of the time when people do it like 3 months on and then 2 months off, you don't want to use it long term. Especially if you have a lot of, like in the back, there's a lot of fusions. You don't want to use it too much.
Bob did 2 months, and then a month off, and then he did the 3rd month.
Yeah.
And that's been a while now, and he just asked me, the other day if he could take
Do it
more.
again.
Do it again.
Just a couple months. He had a neck pain, wasn't it?
Yeah, he
Arm
had
pain and-
degenerating the stuff between the, yeah. He's still having a little bit of, tingling in his fingers, but he's not having the pain that he had, so.
Yeah, excellent.
Mhm.
Camellia, this is absolutely a must if you have little kids or grandkids. Great for colic, great for teething, great for earaches. It is really remarkable for teething.
How do you get a little one like that to keep it in their mouth?
Well, the 30X tablets are just quick dissolving, so as soon as it hits the saliva, it's gone.
And their sugar, they're likely
Yeah.
gonna like it.
Yeah, you gotta keep them out of sight because they think they're candy. 'Cause they're pretty
Is
sweet.
that why the little Amish boy, that,
Drosera, for barking cough, whooping cough, croup, and RSV. There's a lot of RSV going around right now. And the little kids, works really good for that. This is what we use to treat whooping cough. We're using it now in adults that have this lingering cough after that flu that's gone around this winter. So Drosera and something called bronchial formula, which is Nature Sunshine product, seems to work really good for that cough. That way you don't have to use steroids or something like that. Gelsemium. Gelsemium, we use them mostly for chronic fatigue, especially chronic fatigue following a viral illness like mono or a hepatitis or a bad flu, or in that lady's case, a flu shot reaction. This is a remarkable remedy for Epstein-Barr virus syndrome, old mono. People that come with chronic fatigue, if they've had a mono infection at some point in their life, always give them Gelsemium. We give them 200C twice a day for 5 days. We do the same thing for acute mono, and it's nothing short of miraculous for acute mono.
Do you ever get rid of the Epstein-Barr virus, or does it always stay in your body?
Well, the effects go away. What happens is that virus fires up your immune system, and your body thinks that it still has that infection. So the fatigue is actually part of your immune system. You know, when you get the flu and you feel really tired, you feel achy, and that just persists. So it's actually an overactive immune system that thinks the virus is still there. The virus is long gone. Now, some viruses hang on, like the herpes viruses, they stay in your body. But things like the Epstein-Barr, they go away, but the immune system still is overly active.
Performance anxiety, how many, would you do that?
Oh.
Give it to somebody just before?
Yeah, it's just like the arnica before the surgery. You do one the night before the performance, one the morning of, and one just before.
Like test taking or?
Yes, test taking, speeches. Very good for students that have test anxiety.
Oh, I got one of those.
So you take one at before at
Yeah.
night,
One the night before,
and
one the morning of, and then one just before the speech or the test. And schools now have pretty tough policies on medication, so you have to make sure that teachers have it and know what it is, and follow the rules. Don't let the kid just have a tube of those at school because they'll get kicked out. It's ridiculous, but that's kind of how that is now.
You put it in a little mint dispenser.
Pardon?
You put it in a little mint dispenser.
Yeah.
still don't wanna get caught.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, once the night, you said once the night before, once before, in the morning, and
And then one just before the test.
just before the test.
And what happens is it reduces the anxiety for that test, and then the next time they'll have less, and the next time they'll have less, and each time that intensity gets better and better. Ignatia, this is a remedy we use for grief. for lost love, for deaths in the family, especially if somebody is still grieving. I had a woman in last week. Husband's been gone 15 years. She's still grieving. And we've used this several times. She'll get better, and then the anniversary of his death comes, and she goes back in. She does it again for a month, and so it's getting better, but it's been a long one. Most of the time, it works much faster. And that's like once or twice a day. Usually a 30C once a day. This is really good for breakups, and good for kids who lost their girlfriend or boyfriend, and they think their life is over. This is an absolute miracle for morning sickness. Symphory carpus rasmosa. It's a very long name, made from snowberry. But we've seen just amazing results. Sometimes one dose. Sometimes they got to do it once a day. It's like very few cases where it didn't work. Didn't have an Amish lady that didn't work, and we ended up having to give her some progesterone cream. But that's very unusual.
Would that be once a day?
Once a day.
You hear somebody who's having it?
Actually, if there's somebody that's really severe, they can do it more frequently, but most of the time, once a day. And silicoccinum, this is a flu remedy.
It does work.
We use it for prevention, and we use it for treatment. It does not work if you get it too late, so you got to start taking it right away. I got introduced to this. This was my introduction to homeopathy. About 20 years ago now. I had bad reaction to flu shots, so I wasn't taking flu shots. I got the flu. I was still working, and I must have looked bad because the patient said, "Maybe you should try silicoccinum." And I said, "What?" I didn't know what it was, but they sell it at Walgreens, and so I stopped there and got some, and in 24 hours I was completely better. It was amazing. I've seen people take it 2 or 3 days after they start, and it doesn't seem to do much. So keep it on hand, and if you want to prevent the flu, then you take it once a week. And the box is 1 vial. We found that a half a vial works just as good. So I do a half a vial once a week. And sometimes I get a little runny nose, so I sometimes do it about every 10 days. Get a little bit of an aggravation.
So even for treatment, you only use the half a vial?
Yeah, you can do a half a vial, but you do it 4 times a day.
Yeah.
For a family of, let's say you have a family of 4, you can take 1 vial, put it in 4 teaspoons of water, and then everybody gets 1 teaspoon of remedy, and then you can extend your remedy that way.
Wow, I like that.
It works.
It really does work.
Yes.
Pretty remarkable. And it's not real expensive. So this is kind of a review the different natural therapeutics. So let's talk about homeopathic house call. Let's see if I can get this online here. So this is, I don't use it very much because I have enough experience, but for people that don't, the way it works is this start menu, and
Do you have to pay for this?
yeah, it's $65 a year. So it's set up by complaints, locations, and stressors. So let's just look at complaints. So you get a list of these complaints. So does anybody want to pick a complaint?
pain.
Pardon?
Chest pain.
Alright,
That kind of.
chest pain. So it gives you a little bit of a warning if you have chest pain, so go to the hospital, but we'll continue here. So, physical trauma. You're going to answer the questions here.
So
Sure.
yes.
Okay. Continuing. So, how does a person describe the pain? So, tearing pain, sore, bruise, constricted, tightening, heavy, crushing, sharp, stabbing.
Sharper stab.
Okay. Is there any anxiety with chest pain? None of the above. Numbness in left arm and hand. And goes down arm, tingling. Patient can't move left arm.
Arm not a
Arm have. Any weakness in the legs?
Yeah.
Would you like to see a doctor for the chest pain? No. It must be Dell.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Yes. This is good. Yes.
Person's fins. Touch. Right? Any of those apply?
No.
What?
Yeah, probably.
So once you've gone through the questions, then it gives you some choices. So arnica, latrodextrin, I don't know what that is. Acromitum. So if you want to read more about it, so let's go to our favorite friend here. It gives you additional description. If you read that, you can punch that and read more of this one.
It's really cool.
So you get a description. And then, whoa. So let's say you read this one. Severe feeling constriction. What is your description for your feeling? That was tearing. Physical trauma. Was your physical trauma?
No.
And this one was there anxiety with it?
Well, probably.
Okay, we'll select that one. And so then it gives you the information about it. So every 5 to 10 minutes, change the remedy after 3 doses is one improvement, potency, recommendation, long-term care. So pretty much walks you through all of the details.
Right.
Now if you look at that and it's like, that really isn't what I had in mind, you can go back and you can click on some of these others. So I don't remember how many remedies are in here, but this is primarily for first aid. So this is not for chronic treatment or constitutional treatment. This is for first aid kind of stuff. And I even use it myself sometimes, but we have probably half a dozen people that are using it, and we're just delighted. It works on any other questions before I activated. Um, you can access it from any device. So once you sign up, you can get it on your phone, your computer, your tablet. It's a website, so it's not specific to a machine. And if you buy a 2-year subscription for $130, that's $65 a year. You can get $8 to $9 per year, 1 year at a time, or you can do it a month at a time for $12. The people that are using it are people that have little kids.
Yeah.
And it's pretty interesting. So, any other questions about that? All right.
So you can do it, yes, I do have a question. You can do it monthly?
Yep.
If you just so needed it to find some information?
And you get it, if you sign up, you get 2 weeks free.
Okay.
And then, if you like it, you continue on, and if you don't, you click off on it.
Probably just be easier to buy the book.
Well, there's no book per se based on this.
Yeah, but the book that you,
Oh, yeah. This was the Constantine Herring that we talked about. He created something called a box and a book. So he had a book and a box of remedies. And many of the pioneers used this when they were settling out west. So they had their box and a book. And so these guys, there's 4 homeopaths that took the box and the book and used almost all of those remedies plus a few more and put it into this format. So it's the box and the book, and if you go on the website, you actually can read the little story about the remedy.
That's really cool.
So this is just some things that I've got up my sleeve here. I'm going to do some hypnosis group programs for individuals. You can do them either way. Alcohol addictions, sugar addictions, smoking addiction. Group are going to be classes of 2 sessions, and they'll be $30 a session. Individually, I don't think the insurances will work, but they can do like probably $100 a session for individual one. And then just a little shout out about Barb and I. Our rooms are completed upstairs, and so we have rooms for rent if you have family or guests that come to Lakeview and they need a place to stay a night or 2. We've had a few guests stay, and it's kind of fun.
Is it fun? You like it?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Any questions? Just don't store them next to your coffee, because the coffee can deactivate them, or next to your Vicks or something.
Yeah, that's, I know where you're.
Right, because it's a vibrational thing, right? Doesn't have to come in contact with it physically.
it's fascinating.
My instructor, Dr. Murphy, he had a guy that was allergic to the milk sugar, so he just had him put the bottle and carry it in his pocket. And it worked. Now, you tell people that and they think you're nuts, but it's because the vibrational piece is so poorly understood that we don't really talk about that much.
Wi-Fi or any of these little things around us?
Apparently not. That's a good question, but there's lots of EMF in the room here.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, well,
Thank
thanks
you.
for coming
Oh,
out.
thank you.
Yeah. Hope you all learned a little something.
Really not
Definitely
prepared
good.
now.